Over the years, scientists have continued to discover more and more about the mind and its capability. Things such as neuroplasticity and how even thought alone can improve the physicality after somebody has had a stroke. Yes, that's right. Even thought alone can help rewire the brain to help its physical ability again. So what else is the brain capable of? Well, some believe that the mind is capable of things almost inconceivable, as we're about to discover. I've been told I need to speak with a man called Paul Elder, who has dedicated his life to teaching people how to use their minds. So I've sent a team over to a small place called Nanaimo on an island in Vancouver to see what else we can learn about the power of the mind. So hi Paul, I just want to thank you for speaking to me about the mind and what it can do. So I'm pretty excited to learn more about the power of the mind and this thing called remote viewing. So what can you tell me about it?
Remote viewing is probably a misnomer. It should be probably, restated as, remote sensing. If we get a sense of an imagery and things like that in remote viewing, it could be like the memory of an old photograph. It's like something in your mind triggers this. Mostly what appears to be, and this is what we teach in the process, is to trust your heart, to trust that gut feeling that you have. Because the reality is your left brain is designed to be on the edge all the time, okay? So your left brain can make up stuff, all right? Whereas your heart doesn't. So my biggest admonishment in teaching remote viewing is to trust your heart. Your heart never lies to you. In fact, anytime you've ignored that gut feeling, it didn't go so well, did it? Right? We teach people, in a sense, to rely on this, to rely on that gut feeling. It's sort of like musical ability. Everybody can learn to play the piano, with enough practice. But only a few get to go to Carnegie Hall, kind of thing.
So who was Bob Monroe?
He had created a center at that time at the Monroe Institute in Virginia. And the entire purpose of this was to investigate in a real way consciousness itself, to try and isolate, to try and prove that consciousness is beyond the body.
So I believe the Monroe Institute developed something called HemiSync. Is that correct?
Yes. It's based on something called binaural beating, which was discovered by a German scientist back in the 40s. However, Robert Monroe took it to a whole new level of refinement. He had created a studio. First it was in upstate New York, and then finally in Virginia, and where he created a sound chamber, an isolation chamber with water bed and completely acoustically shut off and from everything else around, and put people in there where they would be in complete isolation in the darkness. What they discovered is that it moves the mind into a very deep place and can literally take your brains into deep relaxed states, what they would call where the mind is awake and the body's asleep. So essentially hold your mind awake while you're in a deep dream or a deep sleep state. And this was proven in independent laboratories to be actually effective and working, and so they were awarded a patent on this process called HemiSync.
This is the HemiSync demonstration exercise. It is designed to acquaint you with the HemiSync process so that you have a better understanding of the effects of its use and the potentials of its applications in the area of your particular interest. First of all, set the volume in your headphones so that you hear my voice very softly, just enough to understand my words and no more. Now relax a moment as you listen to the sound of ocean surf the sound of natural power, a symbol we use to depict the natural power of hemisync. I'll return with you in a few moments.
That became sort of the success story, or the foundation of the Monroe Institute, was in being able to take these frequencies, these special sounds, and literally take people into deep altered states of consciousness while their minds are completely awake.
So what is remote viewing?
The research techie at the Monroe Institute, a guy named Skip Atwater, and I found out later that his name was Captain Fred Atwater, and he had been the manager of this special top secret project that intelligence services in the States had put together, which they called remote viewing, and it was run out of Fort Meade in Maryland for some 23 years, using the abilities of psychics, if you will, to track down missing people, hostages, bad people, so on and so forth, and where this all came about. The U.S. intelligence services, CIA, had intelligence that the Soviets had trained psychics who could spy on America, that they could literally sit in a darkened room in Moscow and draw diagrams of missile sites in America, and that caused them a great deal of concern, obviously. So they had not much experience in dealing with that sort of thing, and there were two scientists, two physicists at Stanford Research Institute in California, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff. And the CIA had approached them and said, we've got this intelligence that Russians can do in this, or the Soviets are doing this, and so is that possible? And they said, yeah, probably. They said, well, oh my God, well, how did we defend against it? And they said, good luck, right? But it begged a third question is, well, is this something we could do, U.S. intelligence services? And so Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff thought, yes. And longer story short is they put together a research program, a grant of something like $50-some thousand for an 8-week study, or 8-month study, I can't remember, to see if they could put together their own program that they could use, like what they termed in those days perhaps were psychic spies. At that particular time, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, these two scientists, were working in particular testing people's psychic abilities. And they were working at that time specifically with a fellow named Pat Price, who was a former Los Angeles or California homicide detective, who had some amazing abilities psychically. And they were working also with a guy named Ingo Swann, who was an eccentric artist, corner store psychic, if you will, from New York City. They were doing the typical thing that you would do, testing psychic abilities. Like they would, have, okay, here's 5 cards on the table. One of them has a picture underneath. Which one is it? And doing little tests like that with Pat Price and with Ingo Swann. When the CIA came along, a fellow named Kit Green, with this proposal and gave them this contract. And so it was pretty much put together with the two physicists from Stanford, Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, along with Pat Price, who was a phenomenal remote viewer, and Ingo Swann. It was mostly Ingo Swann who was able to put together a repeatable sort of program. And Ingo based it on the basis that we all have this ability. This is an innate ability that every human has to be able to describe any person, place, thing, or event in history at a distance, through time, through space. So how impossible is that? I mean, to begin with, any person, place, or thing, there are 7 billion people on the planet. That's a pretty remarkable number there. But Ingo and Pat Price and the two scientists understood it, that this is a natural ability that every single human has. And we've all experienced this. You might be sitting in a park somewhere, you might be sitting in the mall, and you get the sense that somebody's looking at you. And you turn around and sure enough, there's somebody there. What part of you knew that? That's the part they're talking about. What part of a mom knows her kid's in trouble 3,000 miles away? That's the part that they were working with. And discovered that if they occupied the left brain with a boring menial task, that it allowed this process to happen. And we've all had that experience. For instance, mowing the lawn, driving your car. How many times that we've all done that? Driving along for 3 hours and you get to where you are, where you're going, and it's like, whoa, you know, what was happening is your left brain was occupied with the driving part, allowing your mind to move into, you know, you're solving the problems of the world, you know, in your mind as you're driving along. And what made that happen or made that possible was occupying your left brain. It's like mowing the lawn, painting a wall, washing the dishes, you know, all of those things. I grew up on a farm as a farm kid from the age of 12 years old or whatever, driving a tractor with a 12-foot cultivator around behind an 80-acre field. You know, at a 1.25 miles an hour, do you know how many rounds it takes around an 80-acre field? Occupying your brain, well, you can solve the problems of the world while that's happening.
So, is there a best time of day to do remote viewing? Because I've heard that sometimes it's better to do it of an evening. What could you tell me about that?
So, in the beginning of the research that they did at Stanford Research Institute and at Fort Meade in Maryland, as they became more and more aware, and we have some very profoundly accurate and amazing remote viewers, people like Pat Price, people like Joe McMoneagle, people like Lynn Buchanan, people, all of these different people, Paul Smith, David Morehouse, just some astonishing abilities. But what they discovered is that there seemed to be a lapse, or there seemed to be higher points and lower points where the information was more accurate. And this was very puzzling for them because they needed to have their information accurate. So what they found is that some of these amazing, talented people could describe practically anything in the future, in the past, so on and so forth. And then every now and then they'd have one that was like, I don't know where I was, but I wasn't anywhere near the target. One thing they have to be is consistent, especially if you're in intelligence services. You don't want to send, the FBI off in the wrong direction kind of things. And they thought, what is causing this? Moving from amazing to, holy crap, I don't know, right? And so they did a study of 14,000 different remote viewing sessions. And what they discovered was actually quite mind-blowing. It seemed that these people, these remote viewers, could be so accurate, and then like 5, 6 hours later, it was like, oh no. One thing that they had consistently done, because this was the military function, okay, to some degree, an intelligence function. So everything was documented. The upper right-hand corner of every remote viewing page, you put your name, your location, where you are on the planet, and the time of day, the hour. And so they studied this, 14,000 different remote viewings, and came up with an amazing analysis of it. What they discovered, applying the knowledge that they had of the universe and so on and so forth, and time and everything else, and discovered an amazing thing, something they called sidereal time, right? It'd be like cosmic time. And what they discovered is that the center of the Milky Way emits a tremendous amount of noise that blasts the Earth and the inhabitants of Earth. And they discovered that in their timing of this, that around the time of 1330, in hourly time, of 1330 sidereal time, there was like a 300 to 400% increase or improvement in accuracy in remote viewing. 300%. So the analogy, and what they worked out with it, is that wherever you are on the planet at 1330 sidereal time, a 300% increase in efficiency or accuracy, the center of the Milky Way is blasting the Earth We're getting blasted by psychosomatic electromagnetic noise, if you will, interfering with our thoughts, coming on. Now, let's say that, over here, the light is the center of the Milky Way. So how do we put this into analysis? Let's say we got the globe here. And here we are on local time in North America on Vancouver Island, right? At 1330 sidereal time, we are on the exact backside of the Earth, with the entire mass of the Earth blocking that noise, that assault from space, from the center of the Milky Way. That blocking of it is blocking that interference. And at that particular time, there is like a 300% improvement in psychic accuracy. But as we come around and as time evolves, we move into a perpendicular place, like 6 hours later, 7 hours later, whatever it is, it's like, hardly bother because you're getting so much noise and so much interference, okay? So you would think, well, 1330 sidereal time, that's 1:30 in the afternoon. Well, it's not, all right? And there's what the problem that some people have to put into mind for this. 1330 or sidereal time is actually 4 minutes shorter each day than our local time, wherever we are, okay? So it doesn't seem like much, 4 minutes per day, but in 1 month, that's 2 hours. And so as this time evolves, we can say, and I can guarantee that this is correct in my classes that have taught, hundreds of classes and stuff with, several thousand people. When we are out of sync, I can see the difference, a huge difference in the perception of the remote viewer classes of the students that are training. They become much more accurate when we're close to about a 2.5 hour window on either side of 1330 sidereal time, wherever we are locally, all right? Huge improvement. And then a few hours later, it's like we wandered way off into the depths somewhere. So sometimes the best time, like right now, if we're on Vancouver Island, I think the best sidereal time is around 9:30 at night here. What they tried, they did a whole bunch of different tests in U.S. in the intelligence services, trying to get around this problem, because sometimes you can't wait, if you got a fast-moving intelligence problem. So they did something like, they would have a remote viewer in a submarine communicating, or in the Pacific, communicating with a remote viewer in a submarine in the Atlantic, to see if the hull of the machinery of the submarine might, deaden this effect of noise from space, all right? Tried various things, including an experiment with Edgar Mitchell and up at the moon. Because where do you go in space when you're exposed to this? So a whole bunch of really interesting things. Very factual, and it really makes a difference. So when I'm doing remote viewing, and many others that are in the business of remote viewing and so on and so forth, or remote sensing, we try to do it around 1330 local sidereal time. Much better success job at it.
So can anyone do remote viewing?
I have trained probably over 3,900 people in remote viewing over the last 20 some years. And I have not run into a single person who just didn't get it. This is a natural, innate ability. So when you take away some of the left brain blocking illusions that we can't do this, or that's impossible, it makes it possible. And that's that part of us that, is connected to everything in the universe. There's more and more proof all the time. And I think this is a really, really cool, exciting time to be alive. It sincerely is. We are, I think, just within years of the landing on the lawn. The big exposure. More and more is going to be exposed all the time at a rapidly accelerating rate. So this is going to become more of a commonplace thing.
So have you ever done a remote viewing that you just simply wished you hadn't?
In the training process, they said, you don't want to just put yourself out on the rail somewhere, in responding to this. And frankly, I do get probably a couple of emails a month from parents whose kids are missing, or from friends who, I haven't seen, I don't know where he is, and they told us you don't want to respond to that unless it comes from authorities, unless it comes from the police. If you go calling up the police, the RCMP or the FBI, and say that you know where there's a murdered kid, somebody's going to come over with, a flashlight to look up, your address. And because, how could you know that? If this is an adult who's missing, perhaps, who's over 18, it could be very well that they want to be missing, right? Are you interfering with their, that sort of thing, right? So I was told this, that you only want to respond if it comes from the police, because you can get yourself into, mixed up and stuff. And I adhered to that, and until one day I had a friend, this is a number of years ago, I had a friend who called me up and asked me if I could do some remote viewing for a friend of hers or someone she knew whose son was missing or something. And I thought, oh gosh, And then, trying to explain it, next day I get an email, a lengthy email from this person saying, well, if I could help. And they knew enough, my friend told, not to tell me anything of the circumstances, because the less a remote viewer knows about the subject, the better they do, because they don't involve their left brain. If you know that something is in Florida, and then you think about oranges, you think about all of, and it's all left brain stuff, right? So we find that the less that is known, the less that a remote viewer is given, the better job they do. All right, they filter out all the stuff. So I agreed, and I said, all I want to know is just his first name, because I knew it was her son, and he was like 14 or something. I can't remember at the time. But she gave me the name, and in the evening, that evening or whatever, I laid down and I did a session during sidereal time, and I drifted very quickly. I put on my headphones, laying on my bed in my office, listening to the special hemisync remote viewing frequencies, if you will. And I drifted away very quickly and became aware as I'm sinking in water. And I was familiar with that because I drowned when I was 12 years old, had this amazing experience. But I'm sinking in warm, salty water. And I knew that this boy, he was just fine, but he just happened to be on the other side already. That he had drowned in a place where the water was warm and salty. And so that's all I could report and say, warm and salty environment, and this kid sank to the bottom, but he's just fine, but he's just not in his physical body anymore. And so I wrote that up as delicately as I could and said, I'm so sorry to tell you, but this is what I've discovered, this is what I experienced. Here's my experience. And I sent it off. And within 20 minutes, I got an email back saying, you are an effing liar. Oh, God. It was really, I was really sort of heartbroken or perplexing. I mean, I can imagine, a parent doesn't want to be hearing that their kid is dead. I thought about all of that, but I became angry and I thought, I'm going to check this out. And so I went deeper into it and found out that there was another story to it, that this had actually been in the news somewhat in Florida, off the Keys in Florida, where this person's former partner had come and picked up their son for the weekend, and we're out boating in the Florida Keys. And after the weekend, they don't return, and the Coast Guard finds the boat on a sandbar and nobody on it, out somewhere in the ocean. And so this person she thought that her former spouse, her husband, had stolen her kid, and they were off somewhere else. And so it verified a few things, that I was correct about, the drowning and so on and so forth. My heart bleeds for parents who were stuck in that kind of a situation, but and it made me angry, the fact that I said, I had told the person, no, I don't want to do it, and these are the reasons why, and then I did, and then I get sort of crapped on. Sometimes people won't accept it or can't accept the answer to be true. So, but having said that, and I want to make this clear, if I hadn't, is that I'm a Canadian, so I've never worked for Stargate. I have helped out in various situations, whether it's looking for missing people or hostages or bad people, over the years, and in teaching this program and so on and so forth. But so just wanted to make that clear.
So what's your favorite thing about remote viewing?
Probably my biggest attraction to it, or probably the biggest thing. I mean, it is so cool, from a 12-year-old point of view. This is like a big secret. It's so cool to be able to do that in the first place, and being able to show people and see the reaction from people by teaching them and saying, see, because we can take a weekend class, if you will, Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, all right, by immersing them into this, thought context, if you will, of remote sensing. And by Sunday afternoon in a weekend class, we can be able to put them into the mind of any person on the planet and describe their location. Now that, I know, sounds absurd, but we've proven it time and time and time again. It works.
So after coming away from the interview today, it sounds fantastic. It sounds like some kind of superhero skill. But if we all have it, then why don't more of us know how to use it? I think I still need a bit more convincing. So I've asked Paul if I can put him to the test. I've asked him to see if he can find me remotely, and he has agreed to do so. Nobody, not even the crew, know where I'm about to go.
She's thinking about a beach. Which isn't consistent with this. I think she's changed her mind, following her thoughts. I think we may have to pause for a minute because she's not where she's wanting to go quite yet. At least I don't get that. Public debate. Again, I get the feeling of water. I'm getting urban, huge, a lot of people, it's noisy. I get the sense of something political. The structure is political. It's a huge structure, glass. But I'm getting it's like an archway. There's more than one. Not sure what it is. The sound of water, like a fountain or something. So the sense of old and also a sense of new, but this is about, this location feels like a lot of people, a political gathering of some sort. It's about politics or political location. Kind of confusing. In one sense, I've got old historical kind of buildings mixed up with water and fountains, and then newer glass kind of structure. This is a massive building, many multi-storied. Like, I don't know, 20, 30 stories probably or something. It's about people, gathering place for people. Politics, public debate, confused with the sound of water though, and fountains and people noises, marijuana. That's about all I can get right now. I'll just do a quick summary here. What we need to do now is just get a hold of Sarah and see where she was and have her describe her location or wherever she went.
Sounds good to me. I'll call her.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Sarah. We're all done here, so we're just very, very curious. If you could introduce yourself and tell us where you are and some of the, the aspects around you, and we'll see how we did.
Okay, sure. I'm in Toronto, and I was gonna go to this place called Sugar Beach all week. That's where I knew I was going, but I got there and there was a big pride event with a lot of rainbow flags, and I couldn't get close to it. So I had to make a quick decision to go somewhere new, and I am currently at City Hall. There's basically two buildings which house politicians that are kind of like half semicircle shapes. And then in front of me, I'm sitting on a bench looking over, it's like a big pond. It's usually an ice skating rink in the winter, but right now it's like a big pond with a water feature in the middle. And there's these big concrete archways that go over the top of it. And at the back of me, I have the old courts, which looks like a very fancy church, I guess. So where did you find me? I'm dying to know.
Well, it was sort of confusing for me at first because, I got the sense of, being hot and muggy wherever it was, and, the colors of blue and gray. But then I got this distinct feeling of an old historic structure. Urban center, lots of people, rounded tops, and then arching, and then I got the sense of water, and I put a question mark beside it. I thought, what, water? And then I quickly scribbled a diagram, if you will, or a drawing of what I perceived as an old historic building with, high 2-3 stories or whatever it was, with archways and peaked roofs and things like that, and then I kept coming back to thinking water, and then I'm thinking, I was sort of tapping into your thoughts maybe, and because I wrote down, she's thinking of a beach, and then I drew some.
What?
I drew some.
That's crazy.
I drew some water and a beach thing, and then I got rainbow flags with a question mark. And then I got a distinct impression. I thought, oh no, she's changed her mind. And so then I wasn't sure at all.
Wow.
Once we, got recentered, because, it took a bit of time, and it came back, and then I'm getting this sense of really, really busy with lots of people, and it was noisy. And
there's a lot of people here, you can probably hear it.
and then huge structure, and I got a multi-storied glass, more modern kind of a building, but it had a distinct impression of being like a political place, like that there is public debate, and I got the distinct impression of a Canadian flag. And
yeah, there's one right in front of me outside City Hall.
Oh. So, but what was confusing to me was this mixture of, I kept getting old and then new, but then what came in, and it kind of threw me for a moment or two, was the sound of moving water. There's, water pressure. So I drew something like water with, with the sort of gushing water coming out of it, and these huge, or in my mind, it was sort of like a big archway, something going across water, and it didn't make any sense to me.
That is so crazy. So, yeah, I mean, you got it spot on. It is very old, but also very modern, because the way that they have it with the Toronto sign is very like urban and modern for sure. But then there's a mix of like old and new buildings around me. And when you see the footage, it's all gonna make sense. I'm a little bit spooked, but also excitedly blown away that you were able to get all of that, because there's so much going on here that my mind is really blown right now. Thank you so much, Paul. I'm looking forward to sending you some pictures so you can make sense of it all now too.
After speaking with Paul, I've learned that remote viewing is something anyone can learn how to do. Apparently, it's an innate ability that we all have. By mastering some deep meditative practices, along with utilizing the HemiSync technology, we're able to connect with our heart. And when that happens, we're then able to connect with something much, much higher. I found this entire project fascinating.